It was supposed to be just another casual gathering, the kind of party where everyone is too busy talking to notice the time flying by. My wife, Sarah, had invited a few close friends over, mostly people we both knew, but there were a couple of her work colleagues I hadn't met before. I wasn't too thrilled about the idea at first, but Sarah insisted. She said it would be fun, that we needed to be social, and honestly, I was always up for a night of hanging out, especially if it meant spending time with her. But this night? This night was different. As soon as I walked into the living room, the atmosphere felt off. Maybe it was the dim lighting, or maybe it was the way everyone seemed to be talking in low voices, glancing over at me when they thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't anything major, but there was an unmistakable tension in the air. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just imagining things, but that nagging feeling didn't go away. I grabbed a drink from the bar and found a seat on the couch next to Sarah. She was chatting with a couple of her friends, laughing and looking more beautiful than ever, her smile lighting up the room. But even in that moment, I could feel something shifting. She hadn't kissed me when I walked in, not like usual. She just gave me a quick hug and went back to her conversation. It wasn't a big deal. I told myself she was probably just caught up in the excitement of the party. I didn't want to make a fuss over something so small. Then, about an hour into the evening, Sarah stood up from the couch. "Hey everyone, I've got something to announce," she said, her voice slightly raised. I'm pulling everyone's attention. I froze. Was she going to tell everyone about the big trip we'd been planning? Or maybe she had a surprise for me? My heart beat a little faster, but I quickly pushed that thought aside. Sarah smiled, clearly enjoying the attention she was getting. "So, after a lot of thought, I've decided that we're opening up our marriage." I remember feeling the room go silent. I didn't even know what she meant at first. It felt like my brain couldn't quite process the words. Open up our marriage? Did I hear that right? A few people in the room started to chuckle, thinking it was some kind of joke, but I could see in Sarah's eyes she wasn't kidding. My stomach dropped, and I stared at her, speechless. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a moment I felt dizzy. Was this a joke? Was she serious? I wanted to ask her to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the shock of it all, or maybe it was the confusion I felt about whether I had missed something she had been thinking for a while. I know, Sarah continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "It's not something you all would expect from me, but, well, I think it's time we try something new." She turned to me with a playful smile, clearly expecting me to laugh along, but all I could do was stare. I felt numb. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had no idea what was going on, but at that moment, I knew things were never going to be the same. The laughter from our friends continued, but I barely heard it. Instead, all I could focus on was the chill creeping down my spine. Sarah leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Relax, babe. It's not as big a deal as you're making it seem." But the way she said it, with that casual tone, made me feel like I was losing control over something I thought I had a handle on my own life. It didn't take long for the night to get stranger. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating into the corner of the room, trying to process what she had said. The laughter and chatter around me faded into the background. I tried to catch my breath, but every time I looked at Sarah, I was met with a look that felt different. She seemed so confident, almost too confident. And then something happened that I couldn't have predicted. Sarah's sister, Melanie, walked over to me with a sly smile on her face. She was always the flirty one, always joking around, but this time, there was something different in her eyes. And then I hadn't noticed Melanie for most of the evening. She had been mingling with the other guests. But now, as she stood in front of me, I felt something stir in the pit of my stomach. "Hey there, big brother-in-law," she said, her voice low and teasing. "I see you're handling things okay with Sarah's big announcement." She glanced over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening before she leaned in closer, her breath warm against my ear. "Great, now you're my boyfriend." I froze. My mind went blank, and for a second, I didn't know how to react. Did she just say that? The words hung in the air, like a weight I couldn't escape. My heart raced as I processed what she had said. My first instinct was to push her away, to stand up and tell her to get lost, but something inside me just froze. Melanie, what are you talking about? I managed to say, my voice shaky. But she just smiled, that mischievous smile of hers, and kissed me right on the lips. I pulled back in shock, my brain trying to make sense of what just happened. The room seemed to tilt. I couldn't believe it. Was this part of Sarah's idea? Did she set this up? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I'll make it easy for you, Melanie said, her voice dripping with confidence. It's okay. You don't have to be so shy about it. We're open, remember? This is what we do now. She winked at me and turned to walk away. I felt like I had just been slapped across the face. I stayed there for a moment, completely stunned, unable to move or speak. My mind was racing. My thoughts were all tangled up, and I couldn't understand any of it. Was I being pranked? Was Sarah in on this? How could she just sit there and let this happen? As I stared after Melanie, I saw Sarah watching me, her face unreadable. She hadn't seen the kiss, but I could see the slight smirk on her lips. It was like she was waiting for something, like she knew this was coming. The entire party felt like it was happening in slow motion. My mind kept replaying what had just happened, Melanie's kiss, the look on Sarah's face, the weight of her words. But nothing made sense. How could this be real? And that's when I realized something. Something was happening here that I couldn't explain. My wife, my life, everything I thought I knew about our relationship, it was all crumbling around me. But what was I supposed to do now? The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to scream, to shout at Sarah, to demand answers, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed. The kiss Melanie's kiss kept replaying in my head over and over. My wife had joked about opening up our marriage, and her sister had just crossed a line that I didn't even know existed. It wasn't even about the kiss, really. It was about everything that followed. How could she think this was okay? How could she think I would be okay with it? I kept glancing back at Sarah, who was still standing in the same spot, smiling, talking to her friends like everything was perfectly fine. But I could see the subtle glint in her eyes. She knew. She knew exactly what was happening, and she wasn't worried in the slightest. My thoughts were a jumble. I should have confronted Sarah right there, but I couldn't. I couldn't even find the words. Hey, what was I supposed to say? Hey, your sister just kissed me, and I'm not okay with that? How did that even fit into what had just happened? Everything felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. As the night wore on, I grew quieter and quieter. I took another drink, trying to calm my nerves, but it wasn't helping. I didn't feel drunk. I felt numb. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed even more at ease. Her laughter rang through the room, louder than ever, as if nothing unusual had happened. But I couldn't ignore the feeling of betrayal in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't stop seeing that kiss. The way Melanie had pulled away, looked at me with that smug expression, and walked off like she'd just done something funny. I couldn't ignore how Sarah hadn't said a word about it. She hadn't even seemed shocked. And then I made my way to the bathroom, needing a moment alone to gather my thoughts. As soon as the door shut behind me, I leaned against the sink, looking at my reflection. The man staring back at me didn't seem like the same guy I was earlier that day. Who was this person? A fool? A victim? Or just someone who had no idea what was happening in his own life? My phone buzzed in my pocket and I pulled it out, hoping for something to distract me from the whirlwind in my head. It was a text from Sarah. Come find me when you're ready to talk. I know you're upset, but it's okay. Just relax. I stared at the message for a few moments. She made it sound so casual, so dismissive, as if what had happened was nothing more than a misunderstanding. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Melanie's kiss. No, this was bigger, much bigger. Sarah was offering me something she'd been planning for a while, and I was just now realizing it. She wasn't just joking around. She was serious. What kind of marriage had I been living in? I knew Sarah was always a bit adventurous, but this wasn't something we'd ever talked about. And now, it felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't understand, something I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of. I took a deep breath and put my phone back in my pocket, then walked out of the bathroom, trying to compose myself before I confronted Sarah. But the moment I stepped into the living room, it was clear she wasn't waiting for me to come to her. She was already on her way to me, her eyes scanning me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. You okay? She asked, her voice light, too light. I wanted to shout, to accuse her, to ask her how she could let this happen. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Instead, I just nodded. I didn't think you'd be upset, she said, almost apologetically, though her words didn't match her tone. She sounded too calm, too collected. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of everything. What do you mean you didn't think I'd be upset? I asked, my voice trembling now. I paused, taking a deep breath. You told me you were opening up our marriage. And then your sister. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected me to react this way. I thought you'd be cool with it, she said, a little more forcefully now. It's just a kiss, right? We've been talking about this for a while, and you know I've always been into new experiences. Han, don't act like this is coming out of nowhere. The words hit me like a slap. I had no idea what she meant by, we've been talking about this. I had never agreed to anything like this. How could she just assume? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. How could she justify this? How could she act like it was all perfectly normal? I was so angry, but I also felt completely lost. Sarah reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Sarah, this isn't just a kiss. You're turning our marriage into a joke. I don't even know who you are anymore. She didn't seem fazed by my words. Instead, she just sighed, her expression shifting, as if she had been expecting this moment. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said a little too calmly, but I think you're overreacting. Now, you and I both know there are things we've been holding back from each other. Maybe this is what we both need to really be free. I shook my head. This was wrong. Everything about it felt wrong. And yet, there she was, standing in front of me, as if she had it all figured out. I don't know who you are right now, Sarah, I said, my voice finally steady. I don't think I ever did. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Maybe we should sleep on it, she said softly. We'll talk more tomorrow. I just want you to know I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want to be happy. And I want us to be happy too. But it was too late. The trust was already broken. How could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I ever trust her again? And then there was Melanie. I hadn't forgotten about her, and I wasn't sure I ever would. I couldn't sleep that night. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with every thought, every possibility. I kept replaying what had happened, the words Sarah had said, the kiss from Melanie, and the cold, distant look Sarah had given me when I confronted her. There were so many pieces to this puzzle, and none of it made sense. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the cracks in our relationship had been there for longer than I wanted to admit. Sarah and I hadn't been the same for months. I had noticed it, the distance, the lack of intimacy, the way she seemed distracted all the time, but I pushed it aside. I told myself we were just busy, that it was nothing more than a rough patch. Now I could see it clearly. This was no rough patch. It was something far deeper, something I didn't know how to fix. Yes, and around 4 a.m., I couldn't stay in bed any longer. I grabbed my phone, thinking about calling Sarah, asking her to explain everything that had been happening behind my back. But then I realized I couldn't just let this go without knowing the whole truth. I had to understand why this was happening, why she'd opened up our marriage, why Melanie was involved, and why Sarah seemed so comfortable with it all. I decided to start with Melanie. I texted her, trying to keep my tone calm, even though inside I was seething. Melanie, we need to talk. What happened between us tonight? It didn't take long for her to reply. What's the problem? It's just a kiss. Relax. I felt my blood boil. Just a kiss? Was she really that dismissive of it? Was I the only one who saw how wrong it was? It's not just a kiss. You crossed a line tonight, and I need to know why you thought it was okay, I texted back. The reply came quickly. You're way too sensitive. Sarah told me she wanted to try something new. You're always so uptight about everything. She thought it would be fun, and I was just playing along. I was stunned. Sarah had told Melanie? She had shared this idea with her sister, and it was Melanie who was pushing me to relax and have fun? My mind was reeling, trying to piece together the full picture. I needed more answers. This wasn't just about a kiss. This was about something much bigger, something that went beyond a moment of passion or a mistake. This was a plan, a strategy that Sarah and Melanie had been working on, and I had been kept in the dark. I called Sarah, my hands shaking as the phone rang. When she answered, I could tell from the way she greeted me that she knew exactly what I wanted to ask. There was no apology, no hesitation, just a cold, calculated tone. "What's going on, Ryan?" she asked, like she wasn't even bothered. "You tell me," I shot back. "What's going on between you, Melanie, and me? Did you really think I wouldn't find out what you two were planning? What, you've been talking behind my back?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Sarah taking a deep breath, her voice softening a little when she spoke again. "Ryan, it's not what you think. It was never meant to hurt you." "Then why did Melanie kiss me tonight?" "Why did you let her kiss me?" I asked, my voice rising. "What kind of game are you playing? How long has this been going on?" "Just relax, okay? It's not a game, it's just a way to explore. You've always been so rigid, so strict. We've talked about this before. I wanted to try something different. I thought you'd understand." Her words hit me like a slap, the sheer audacity in her voice making my chest tighten. "I'm not trying to destroy our marriage. I just wanted us to experience something new together." "By letting your sister kiss me?" I could barely contain the anger in my voice. "Do you think I'm just some pawn in your game? Do you even care about me anymore?" There was another long pause before Sarah answered, her voice quieter this time, almost apologetic. "I do care about you, but I'm tired of pretending. I don't want to live in this bubble anymore. I don't want to be trapped by society's rules." "Don't you want more, Ryan? Don't you want to feel free?" I was speechless. She was talking about freedom, but it felt like I was being imprisoned. She had already crossed so many lines, and now she was telling me that I was the one who was holding us back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You've already crossed the line, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking. "And now you're telling me I'm the problem? You're the one who's been planning this, not me. You're the one who's been playing with me and Melanie, and I'm done being your fool." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Sarah didn't know how to respond. She couldn't deny what she had done, and she knew it. But she didn't want to admit it. Instead, she just said, "Maybe we need some space." Space. The word hit me hard. Space? She wanted space? After everything? "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "If that's what you want, then take it. But don't ever expect me to just sit by and let you tear apart everything we've built." I ended the call, feeling the weight of the words I had just said. It wasn't the resolution I was hoping for. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of something much darker, much harder to face. The truth was starting to unfold, but with every answer, I found myself with more questions. How long had Sarah been planning this? How long had Melanie been involved? Was I the only one who had been left in the dark? Or was there something even deeper going on? I needed to find out. I couldn't live in this confusion any longer. But the more I learned, the more I realized that the truth was a dangerous thing. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming next. The following days felt like a blur. After that phone call with Sarah, everything seemed to spiral. I didn't go to work for the next 2 days, choosing instead to stay home and try to make sense of everything. Every moment I spent in the house felt like a cruel reminder of the life I thought I had. The house felt empty, even though Sarah was still there. The walls seemed to echo with her absence, her emotional absence at least. I would catch glimpses of her, but it was as though we were living in two different worlds. For the first time in our relationship, I felt utterly disconnected from her. She would pass by me offering a half-hearted smile, or tell me that we should talk later, but I knew in my gut that nothing would change. She had already made her decision. I couldn't stop thinking about Melanie. I tried to push her out of my mind, but it was impossible. I kept replaying that kiss in my head, how she had come up to me so confidently as if she had every right to do it. And Sarah sitting there, watching it all unfold, saying nothing, doing nothing. I had tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew better. Melanie wasn't just playing around. She wasn't some innocent bystander in this. She was involved. She was complicit. And that was something I couldn't ignore. On the third day after the party, I couldn't take it any longer. I needed answers. I needed to confront both of them, Sarah and Melanie, and figure out once and for all what the hell was going on. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it was clear that it wasn't. I texted Melanie, asking her to meet me in person. I wasn't going to let this go. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop in an hour. We can't keep doing this over text. Her reply was immediate. Okay, see you there. I left the house without saying a word to Sarah. I wasn't ready to face her yet. Part of me wasn't sure I ever would be. But Melanie, I had to face her. I had to know why she felt it was okay to kiss me, to cross that line, without even a second thought. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I saw Melanie sitting at a table by the window, her arms crossed, a look of casual defiance on her face. She saw me and gave me a small wave, like we were just friends meeting for coffee. There was no tension, no sign of remorse. It was almost as if she had no idea why I would be upset. I sat down across from her, staring at her, trying to hold myself together. But inside I was boiling. Do you even realize what you've done? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Melanie didn't seem fazed. She leaned back in her chair and shrugged. I told you, it's just a kiss. It's not a big deal. My heart pounded in my chest, and I leaned forward. It's a big deal to me. And it's a big deal because you're not the only one involved here, Melanie. Sarah knows everything. She's been planning this. She's been encouraging you to do this. And she's been using me as some kind of experiment. Her eyes flickered for a brief moment. But then she recovered, leaning in slightly, her voice lowering. It's not like that. Sarah has always been the more open one in our family. She's just exploring. She wants to feel free, Ryan. You should understand that. You've been so closed off for so long. We thought, well, we thought this would help you loosen up. I could feel the rage building inside me. You thought? You thought? So this whole thing was a way to fix me? To fix our marriage? You and Sarah just decided to make that decision for me? Melanie's gaze dropped for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. It's not like that, she said again, her voice calmer now. We weren't trying to hurt you. Sarah told me she wanted to try something new, and I just went along with it. You've always been so predictable. You never try anything different. And maybe you should be grateful. We're just trying to give you something you've never had before. I felt like the ground beneath me was giving way. Grateful? I asked, my voice a whisper now. You really think I should be grateful for you kissing me? For Sarah opening up our marriage without even asking me? For making me feel like a joke? This is your idea of help? Melanie didn't answer right away. Instead, she seemed to look at me more closely, almost as if seeing me for the first time. Look, she said after a long pause, I didn't mean to hurt you, okay? I wasn't trying to ruin anything. But Sarah was right about one thing. You can't just live your life the same way forever. You can't just stick to the same routines and expect everything to stay the same. People change, Ryan. We're all trying to figure things out. But you need to open up. You need to stop shutting everything out. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I'm not shutting everything out. I'm just trying to protect what's mine, I said through gritted teeth. Melanie sat back in her chair, her eyes hardening. I don't know if you'll ever understand, Ryan. Maybe you'll never be okay with it. But this is who we are now. This is what Sarah and I have been talking about. You don't get it. You don't get us. I didn't know how to respond. I was angry, devastated, and confused. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it was clear that Sarah and Melanie had already decided for me what my life was going to be. And I wasn't okay with it. I don't know where we go from here, I said quietly, standing up from the table. But I can't do this anymore. Not with you, not with Sarah. I don't even know who I'm married to anymore. Melanie didn't try to stop me as I walked out of the coffee shop. She didn't call after me. She just sat there, watching me go. It was like she knew I was done. I wasn't going to let her or Sarah manipulate me any longer. It wasn't until I got home that the weight of everything truly hit me. I stood in front of the door for what felt like an eternity before finally turning the knob and stepping inside. The house was eerily quiet. I could hear the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the floorboards under my feet. But Sarah was nowhere to be seen. I walked through the house, my footsteps heavy, and made my way to the living room. It looked exactly the same as it had before, but everything felt different. The familiar comfort of the place I had shared with Sarah was gone. The pictures on the walls, the couch we had spent countless nights sitting on together, the small touches that had always made this house feel like a home, they all seemed foreign now. I found Sarah in the kitchen, standing by the counter, her back to me. She was chopping vegetables, her movements slow and methodical, as if she had all the time in the world. She didn't even turn when I walked in. For a moment, I considered walking away again, letting her have her space, letting her keep living in the fantasy world she had created. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her keep hiding from the truth. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm, but there was an edge to it. She didn't respond immediately. It was almost like she was waiting for me to speak, as if she was ready for this moment, but didn't want to face it yet. After a few seconds, she finally turned around, her eyes meeting mine. She wasn't surprised to see me. She had known I'd be back. She had known I'd come for answers. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, almost too soft, as if she were trying to play the role of someone who hadn't just betrayed me in the worst way possible. I didn't know where to start. There were so many things I wanted to say, so many things I needed her to understand. But before I could speak, she looked at me and said, "Ryan, we need to talk." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep my composure. "We're already talking," I said, my voice tight. "I just spent hours with Melanie. She told me that you were the one who came up with this whole thing, opening up our marriage, pushing me into something I didn't want. You told her it was my problem, that I was the one who needed to loosen up. Is that true, Sarah?" Sarah's face shifted slightly. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, but it disappeared quickly. She put down the knife she had been holding and took a deep breath. "I never meant for you to feel like this," she said, her voice low. "I thought it was what we both needed. I thought it would be good for our relationship. I've been feeling trapped, Ryan. I don't want to live the life we've been living anymore. I need to be free. And I thought maybe this would help us both." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Free?" I asked incredulously. "You think this what you did was freedom? You think tearing apart everything we've built is freedom?" Sarah didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with those eyes that had once been so full of warmth and love. But now they were cold, distant. "Yeah, I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I didn't want to betray you, but I couldn't keep living a lie. We've been stuck in the same routine for years, Ryan. We haven't really connected in so long. I've been craving something new, something real. I thought maybe if we could just let go of all the rules, all the expectations, we could be free. I thought it could bring us closer, make us stronger." I stared at her, my mind racing. How could she think this was what we needed? How could she think that pushing me away and bringing her sister into this would make things better? "You were never the one who was stuck, Sarah." I said through clenched teeth. "You've been living in your own world, doing whatever you want, while I've been here, working, trying to make our life better. You think opening up our marriage was the answer to all of this? You think letting Melanie kiss me was a way to fix things?" Her face turned pale, and I saw her hands shake as she gripped the edge of the counter. "I thought it would be a way for us to reconnect," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought it would bring back the spark. We were so different back then, Ryan. We used to have fun. We used to love each other in ways that felt real. But now, it felt like we were just roommates, not a husband and wife. And I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sarah, the woman I had built my life with, was sitting here, telling me that she didn't feel anything for me anymore, that she had gone behind my back with her sister, kissing me to bring back the spark. I was furious. But underneath that fury, no, there was something else, something I hadn't expected. Hurt, pain, a deep, hollow feeling that I couldn't shake. "And Melanie?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Was she in on this the whole time? Did you tell her to kiss me? Was this all part of your plan?" Sarah's eyes flickered, and for the first time in the entire conversation, she seemed uncomfortable. No, she said quickly, her voice too fast. I never told her to do anything. She thought it would be fun. I didn't know how far she would go. But she didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to hurt me? I repeated, disbelief in my voice. Melanie kissed me, Sarah, and you watched. You did nothing. You didn't stop her. You didn't tell her to back off. You let it happen. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. I never meant for things to go this far, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought it was something we could try, something that would make us better, something we could do together. But I see now that I was wrong. I'm sorry, Ryan. I never meant to destroy everything we've built. My chest felt tight, and I found it hard to breathe. I didn't know what to say anymore. I didn't know how to fix this. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, she had completely betrayed me. You've already destroyed everything, Sarah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't go back from this. Not after what you've done. Not after what both of you have done. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I left the house that night, feeling like a man who had just witnessed his entire world crumble in front of him. Sarah's apologies, her tears, none of it mattered anymore. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this sickening wave of betrayal. Everything she said, everything she tried to explain, seemed like empty words now. Excuses for the choices she had made, the choices she had made for us, for me. But it wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the choices she had made, the people she had involved, and the complete lack of respect she had shown for the life we had built together. I drove aimlessly for hours that night, not really knowing where I was going, just needing to get away from everything that reminded me of Sarah. The city lights blurred as I sped down unfamiliar roads. The radio played softly in the background, but I wasn't listening to it. I wasn't listening to anything. I was drowning in my own thoughts. I thought about calling my friends. Maybe I needed to talk to someone to get it all off my chest, but I couldn't. How could I explain this to anyone? How could I tell them that my wife had opened up our marriage without even telling me? That her sister had kissed me like it was some joke? How could I even put that into words? But even more than that, I kept thinking about Melanie. That kiss, the way she looked at me, the way she walked away with that smug expression on her face. I couldn't shake the image of her. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. This wasn't just about Sarah's infidelity. It was about the way Melanie had treated me. It was about the fact that she thought she had the right to do whatever she wanted, as if there were no consequences. And it wasn't just that kiss. I had heard the way she spoke to me, the way she tried to manipulate the situation. Now you're my boyfriend, she had said, as if everything was just a game. She wasn't just playing along with Sarah's plans. She had crossed a line, and I couldn't forgive her for it. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner, the sun was starting to come up. I hadn't realized how long I'd been driving, but the exhaustion was finally hitting me. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, staring at the empty road. I needed to think, to gather my thoughts. But the weight of everything, the betrayal, the confusion, the heartbreak, was almost too much to bear. I walked into the diner, and the familiar smell of coffee and pancakes hit me immediately. The place was nearly empty. Just a few truck drivers and night owls scattered around the booths. I took a seat at the counter and ordered a coffee, my hands still shaking as I wrapped my fingers around the warm cup. I sat there for a long time, letting the silence wash over me. The waitress came over to refill my cup, and I looked up at her, barely noticing her until she smiled and asked if I needed anything else. I gave a half-hearted smile, shaking my head. Just trying to figure some things out, I said, my voice low. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to explain the storm in my mind. I was lost, completely and utterly lost. My marriage, my trust, my entire life, it all felt like it had slipped through my fingers in the blink of an eye. And the worst part? I didn't even know where to go from here. The phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out and saw a message from Sarah. Ryan, please come home. I need to talk. We can fix this, I promise. I don't want to lose you. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. She was begging me to come back. She was begging me to believe her, to trust her again. But how could I? How could I ever trust her again after everything she had done? After everything that had happened? I texted back, my fingers shaking as I typed. It's over, Sarah. You've made your choice. You've already broken us. I can't go back from this. I sent the message and tossed my phone down on the counter, feeling the weight of my own words. For the first time in days, I felt like I had finally taken control. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I wasn't going to let her or Melanie control my life. And yet, as I sat there, a part of me still longed for the life we had shared, for the love I thought we had. A part of me wished things could be different, wished we could go back to the way things were before all this. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed, knew that I couldn't just forgive and forget. Not this time. I finished my coffee and stood up, leaving the diner without a second glance. I had made my decision. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only choice I had left. As I got back into my car and drove away from the diner, I realized something else. This wasn't just about Sarah. It was about me, about my own self-respect, about the boundaries I had to set. I had spent so long letting other people dictate my life. I'm letting Sarah and Melanie decide what was okay for me, and I wasn't going to do that anymore. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to move forward. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, waking up, eating, working, trying to keep myself busy, but nothing felt right. Every time I walked into the house, it felt emptier. The silence was deafening. I could still feel Sarah's presence in the house, but it was no longer a comforting feeling. It was haunting. I tried calling her a few times, but she wouldn't pick up. I wasn't sure if she was giving me space or if she had already given up on fixing things. But I didn't need her to call me anymore. I knew what had to be done. The more I thought about it, the more I realized. There was no going back. It wasn't just Sarah's betrayal that had broken me, and it was the fact that she had involved Melanie. I couldn't get past the idea that they had been scheming together, that they had planned this all along, and I had been none the wiser. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Melanie's face, that smug look on her lips after she kissed me, like she had won some twisted game. It felt like a violation on a deeper level. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, a tight knot in my chest. I wanted to confront Melanie, demand answers. But part of me knew it wouldn't help. What could she say that would make this all right? She had already made her intentions clear. She wasn't some innocent bystander. She was a willing participant in this chaos. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was the one who had pulled the strings. She was the one who had allowed it all to happen. And that realization hurt more than anything else. I was done. I couldn't keep living in this toxic environment. Couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to make it official. I texted Sarah, letting her know I was coming to speak to her in person. No more calls, no more messages. It was time to face the truth head on. I'm coming over. We need to talk. This ends today. I left the message short and to the point. No more games, no more pretending. When I arrived at the house, I saw Sarah sitting on the porch, her eyes red from crying. But even through the tears, there was something cold about her, a detachment, as if she already knew what was coming. She didn't stand up when I approached. She didn't even move. It was like she had already given up. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice shaky, "I've been waiting for you." I didn't reply immediately. I just stood there, looking at her, trying to make sense of everything. This woman, the one I had trusted with my heart, had destroyed everything. But there was still a part of me that wanted to believe she could change, that this wasn't who she was. "I'm done, Sarah," I said finally, my voice steady. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. You've made your choice. You and Melanie. You've both crossed a line I can't come back from." Sarah's eyes welled up again, and she wiped her face with the back of her hand. But her expression didn't change. "I didn't want to hurt you, Ryan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought it would help. I thought it would make everything better. I wanted to feel free." I shook my head. The bitterness in my throat threatening to choke me. Freedom? I asked, my voice rising. You think this is freedom? You think destroying everything we had is freedom? No, Sarah, this is nothing but selfishness. This is you running away from the reality of what we built. She didn't respond. She just sat there, her shoulders shaking slightly, but she didn't cry out loud. It was like she had already given up, like she had accepted that this was the end. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Ryan, she said after a long silence. I know I've made mistakes, but I never wanted to lose you. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me. But another part of me, this small, broken part, wanted to reach out, to hold her, to pretend that everything could go back to normal. But I knew it couldn't. I couldn't. I can't go back to the way things were, I said finally, my voice breaking. I don't trust you anymore, Sarah. I can't live with the lies, the manipulation, and I can't live with what you did to me, to us. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Ryan. I never meant to hurt you. I could feel the anger rising again, but I pushed it down. It's too late for sorry. The damage is done. I have to move on. We both do. I turned to leave, but as I stepped away, I heard her call out, Ryan, please. Don't walk away. Please don't leave me like this. I stopped in my tracks, my hand on the door. For a moment, I hesitated. The pain in her voice was almost enough to make me turn around. But then I remembered Melanie's face. The way she had kissed me like it was some game. I remembered the betrayal, the lies. No, Sarah, I said, my voice firm. This is over. You don't get to keep pulling me back into your chaos. I'm done. And with that, I walked out of the house, not looking back. The days following that final confrontation were some of the hardest of my life. I spent most of them in a haze of confusion, anger, and disbelief. I couldn't believe what had happened. How everything I thought I knew had been shattered in the span of a few short weeks. I stayed at a friend's place for a while, needing to put distance between myself and everything that reminded me of Sarah. Every corner of the house felt like a reminder of the betrayal, and I couldn't escape the pain no matter where I went. I had lost the woman I loved, but it wasn't just her loss that haunted me. It was the betrayal of trust, the complete disregard for the life we had built together. And then there was Melanie. I hadn't heard from her since that night, and part of me was relieved. But another part of me felt like I needed to get closure. I needed to understand why she had done what she did, why she felt so entitled to cross that line. I couldn't stop thinking about her. How could she look me in the eye and do what she did without any hesitation? I needed answers. But as the days went by, I realized something. I was no longer interested in finding answers from them. I had spent so much time trying to understand Sarah's choices, trying to understand why she had done what she did, that I had neglected myself. I started going to therapy, something I had avoided for a long time. I had always believed I could handle my problems on my own, but now I knew I needed help. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of this betrayal. I needed to rebuild myself, piece by piece. I had to learn to trust myself again, to learn to believe that I deserved more than the life I had been living. Therapy wasn't easy. Every session forced me to confront the things I'd buried deep inside, my anger, my fear, my sense of worthlessness. But with every breakthrough, every tear shed, I felt a little lighter. I was learning to let go of Sarah, let go of Melanie, and most importantly, let go of the guilt I had carried for too long. As time passed, I began to heal. Slowly but surely, I started rebuilding my life. I found new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and started focusing on my career again. I even started dating again, though it wasn't easy to open up to anyone. The scars Sarah and Melanie had left on me ran deep, and it took time to learn to trust again. But the hardest part was facing Sarah again. After months of silence, I finally heard from her. It was a simple message, one that took me by surprise. Ryan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you can forgive me. I've made so many mistakes, and I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had ruined my life. But I didn't. Instead, I simply replied, I don't know what the future holds, Sarah, but I've learned a lot in the past few months, and I'm moving forward. I have to. I didn't expect that message to bring me closure, but it did. In a strange way, it helped me put the final nail in the coffin of my old life with her. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. I knew that if I was ever going to move on, I had to stop looking back. I had to stop questioning what went wrong, stop analyzing every moment of my marriage, every word Sarah said. It was over, and I had to let it go. I don't know what happened to Sarah and Melanie after that. I stopped checking in, stopped wondering if they had changed or if they had learned anything from all of this. My life was no longer defined by them. It was defined by me, and that was the only thing I needed to focus on. The months that followed were filled with both pain and healing. I knew that the hardest part of recovery wasn't the breakup itself. It was the process of reimagining my life without Sarah, without the expectations I had placed on myself, and without the weight of the betrayal that had torn me apart. The first few weeks were the hardest. I had so many moments where I'd think I saw Sarah out of the corner of my eye or hear a song we used to listen to together and feel that gut punch of grief all over again. But those moments started to fade. Slowly, I started to find myself again. I spent more time with my friends' real friends, the ones who had supported me through all of this without judgment. They had always been there, but in my marriage, I had neglected them. I was so consumed with Sarah, so wrapped up in my own pain, that I had shut myself off from everyone around me. But now, I was learning to open up again. I found myself laughing again. So it felt strange at first, almost like my emotions were out of practice, but it felt real. It felt like a sign of progress. And then there were the moments of quiet reflection. I realized how much of my identity had been tied up in Sarah. For so long, I had defined myself by the relationship, by the person I thought I was supposed to be. But now, I had to rediscover who I was. I couldn't be the same man I was in that marriage. I couldn't keep holding on to the man who had been betrayed. That version of me didn't exist anymore. One night, while I was sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling through old photos on my phone, I came across a picture of Sarah and me from years ago when we first met. We were so young, so full of hope. The woman in that picture was the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had been my best friend. But I wasn't looking at her with anger or resentment. I was looking at her with understanding. I had loved her deeply, and for that version of us, I would always be grateful. But I couldn't keep holding on to that memory. It was time to let go of the past. I deleted the photo. The first time I went on a date after everything, I was nervous, terrified even. How could I ever trust someone again? How could I ever let someone into my heart after everything Sarah and Melanie had done? But I went, and I was surprised at how much it felt like breathing again. It wasn't about moving on from Sarah. It was about moving on from the version of myself that had been broken. I wasn't trying to replace her or forget her. I was simply learning to trust myself again. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I spent time exploring what I wanted out of life, out of relationships and out of myself. The more I did this, the more I realized that I wasn't lost. I wasn't broken. I had simply been shaken, tested, and forced to face the harshest realities. But those tests hadn't destroyed me. They had made me stronger. Eventually, I reached out to a few of my old contacts, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were old friends, others were colleagues. Slowly, I rebuilt my network. I learned how to balance my life with work, with friendships, with everything that made me feel alive again. I rediscovered the parts of me that had been lost, parts that had nothing to do with Sarah or Melanie or the painful memories. I realized I had a future that was mine and mine alone, and that future was full of possibility. One day, while I was out running errands, I bumped into Sarah at the grocery store. Now, it was unexpected, and for a moment, I froze. There she was, looking almost the same, yet somehow different. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and regret. I couldn't tell. For a split second, we stood there, just looking at each other. There were no words at first. And then Sarah spoke. Ryan, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far. I was selfish. I hurt you. I didn't deserve you. Her words were genuine, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. But I wasn't the same man who had stood in front of her months ago. I wasn't the same man who had begged for answers. I was different now, stronger, more self-aware. I had moved on, not from her, but from the pain she had caused me. I had learned that forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean going back. It meant letting go. I took a deep breath, my voice steady when I finally responded. I don't know if I'll ever understand why it happened the way it did, Sarah. But I've moved on. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. And I hope you find what you're looking for. But I'm no longer part of that chapter in your life. Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. She looked down, her hands shaking. For a moment, it seemed like she was about to say something else. But then she just whispered, "Goodbye, Ryan." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The healing process isn't linear. It's full of setbacks, unexpected twists, and painful realizations. But it is also full of growth, understanding, and strength. For me, the journey from betrayal to recovery was one of the hardest I've ever taken. But it was also the most important. It taught me that I am enough, that my happiness doesn't depend on someone else's actions or decisions. It taught me that moving on doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning to live for yourself again. If you've ever experienced a betrayal like mine, you know the pain it can cause. But you also know that eventually the pain fades. The scars remain, but they don't define you. And if you're still in the process of healing, remember this. You are not alone. You are stronger than you think. And you are worthy of the love and respect you deserve. So, to everyone who's been through something similar, share your story. Let others know that healing is possible. And if you've been inspired by my journey, please share this video, comment below with your experiences, and subscribe for more content like this. You're not just watching my story, you're part of it. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a similar experience as such. How did you navigate through it? Were you able to bounce back? Or has it left you completely shattered? Tell me, what do you think I should have done or done better? Also, don't forget to support this channel's growth by subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.